My name's Andrew Frisbie. I am the Collection Development Librarian here at the library. My role encompasses developing the collection, so I do selection of materials, the actual ordering of them, cataloging them as they come in, and when the time comes, weeding old stuff off of the shelf. So I do that for our physical collection as well as the digital collection, the one that we share with Iowa City and Coralville, Digital Johnson County. But for the physical collection, an aspect of it is maintaining it. So physical stuff, especially kids' books, kind of get run through the ringer. So repair is kind of a big part of what we do as well. You can be extremely precious about this, like have very specific tools. We're a public library, so we kind of use tools that are relatively easy to get, but they kind of get the job done. Glue is a big one. This is a specific binding glue that remains kind of flexible. You want the book to have some give and flexibility, otherwise if you use a really brittle glue, it's just going to crack and all the problems will start all over again. In the last training I had, they very much advocated for just using Elmer's. We basically cut the orange tip part off, and then this is a knitting needle. The glue kind of dries into a seal, but then you get a nice amount of glue so that if you're kind of trying to get glue into like a confined space, use that to kind of work the glue in. We also have a variety of tapes. It's gaffer tape, but it's sort of flexible, sort of fabric-y tape. And then two kinds of clear tape. One is a little more glossy and one is a little more matte. There are also like very specific kinds of tape repair materials you can get. This is like a tape, but it has like a stitch in it. So you would sort of get it in like that so that like the book could still hinge very nicely. I guess before we get to what some of the problem children are, I do have a nice book that a friend of mine made that kind of has none of the extra stuff around it. So you can sort of see what a book actually looks like underneath and like how it is bound together. The pages are sort of bundled together. You can sort of see the bundles there. Those are stitched individually. Looks like it is 5 pieces of paper, so it ends up with like 10 pages. And then those are all stitched together in this fancy stitching on the back. So what tends to happen is if one of these pages falls out, oftentimes this one will, and sometimes the rest down that are stitched together will kind of fall apart further down. But if it were to happen, say, here, the stitching isn't right there, that can be a little bit easier to fix and you can get it to cobble along together a little bit longer. Most common problems that we come across here are torn or loose pages. So this one page came out completely. There are a couple of options. You could do, it's called a tip-in. So you basically take some wax paper to put it here so you don't get glue on this side. You put a thin layer of glue on, you tip that page in and get it nice and secure, and then you put another piece of wax paper on this side so that glue doesn't seep over onto this page. Close it. By and large, we usually just use regular rubber bands to kind of keep things together, but you can also use what is called an H rubber band, which will go kind of around the whole thing and keep it like nice and secure. And then we usually kind of just let the glue dry for 24 or 48 hours and we come back and see how it's working. There is also the option on this one to just use that matte tape. I tend to use the tape if more like a corner of a page was like ripped off there. So this one has a tear kind of like that, but it's also coming away here, and there's that big sort of gap there between the outer spine and then where the actual stitching for the binding is. So that is a situation where we would take the knitting needle and try to get some glue down in there to kind of get it just a little more affixed. And then I would take the gaffer tape because it helps with the hinge a little bit more right there. This one, it was donated to us. We would glue along there, get it affixed nice like that, and then give it a little bit of tape there, rubber band it up, and then we usually store it kind of so that the weight of the book is hopefully pushing down on that glue and making a nice seal. We also have an array of different jackets that we've used over the years here at the library. So we have these plasticky ones that were sort of heat sealed on. that in the long run have not worn very well. This is an easy example because there is not an actual dust jacket underneath. I will have to make a new label for it, but sometimes if there were a dust jacket underneath, that would then have to be laminated so that it could be repaired and ready for the shelf. And then there's also, this one is very old. We used Mylar that got torn up. So basically we would cut all of the Mylar off of this book, and then just the jacket we would run through the laminator, reaffix it to the book, and it would be ready for the shelf. Sometimes there are books that are beyond repair, and we have to be okay with that. And this is true of books that you have at home. What Johnson County Refuse has asked us to do is, if it's a hardback, we basically use like a paper cutter to cut the hardback off. That goes in the trash, and then the text block, that just goes in your recycle bin. So if you have a book that is kind of gross and falling apart at your house, you can cut the hardback off, throw that away, and then the paper can go in your recycling. And if it's just a paperback that is grimy, it can go straight in recycling as well. Fantastic.
Yeah, there you go.
Alrighty.